Despite the promises of democratic socialists, make America great again diehards, and all proponents of government, the government is not your savior. It is not your guardian. Government is violence, and you need only look to the continual instances of brutality on the part of government agents to see that. Police officers who routinely beat and kill people over minor violations, the slightest displays of disrespect, failing to cower to their authority, or simply because they're trigger happy, even when their victims haven't done anything wrong. Look to the troops who commit war crimes for the state, killing innumerable civilians in endless wars. There are millions of Americans who might be triggered by this blunt reality, claiming such actions are justified or at the very least uncommon. It's only bad apples who do this, they assure us. While I don't dispute the good intentions of numerous people who sign up to be cops and soldiers, extreme and shockingly common examples of the brutality many commit are not the reason why government is violence. In fact, the only thing that makes government is violence. Good cop, good soldier, bad soldier, every single one of them is perceived to have the authority to use violence against individuals if they do not submit to the rules the government dictates. Whether those rules are crafted by a dictator, a monarch, or a body of people claiming to represent other people, no matter how many times they prove that's not their priority, despite insisting we are the government. Even if we did live in a land of unicorns and rainbows where politicians actually represented their constituents, the fact would still remain that in order to enforce their laws, violence or the threat of it to coerce compliance is what defines the state, and this is unique to government. A food company or any other, no matter how vile or corrupt, cannot force you to purchase their products. And if they can push you into supporting them, it's usually because they've commanded influence over or colluded with the state to grow their power. Government is the only entity morally entitled to use violence without being condemned, writing down laws on paper and employing enforcers to make sure we all submit. If you kill someone, you're rightly deemed a murderer. If a cop or soldier does it, true believers in government will defend it, if not glorify it, as a righteous action to defend your freedom. If you steal from someone, you're rightly called a thief. When the government does it, it's called taxation and the price you pay to live in a civilized society, even if underpinning that so-called civilization is the threat of violence. Don't believe me? Think taxation is voluntary via the social contract and doesn't require violence? Let's entertain the IRS and apply the same for parking tickets, traffic violations, and vehicle registration fees. If you don't pay the amount the government gang demands, even as you fund their paycheck, the government can seize your property if it wants. It can threaten to throw you in prison. What happens if you resist their attempts to throw you in a cage? The government can use violence against you, and it'll be considered legitimate and well within their rights. Even the government's democratic socialists prop up as utopian examples of peace and equality are underpinned by this characteristic violence. Even in Denmark, for example, the land of universal healthcare and social programs, the state asserts its authority to throw you in a cage for not complying. Now, you might snap back that the government rarely actually does this, yet they still do it, and it's not just that it happens regardless of frequency, but that these institutions of power and the people who work for them insist it's their authority to do so if they deem it justified. No one seems to be able to explain how human beings who take on special titles and wear costumes and uniforms, proclaiming to work for the government, get this authority, this right to commit acts of theft and violence that we, the individuals they claim to represent, do not have. How do you delegate a right you don't have to another human being? How do you project yourself to be the government when the government is a ruling class with special authority you don't have, and through that delusion, assert your right through majority rule elections to have masters you like make decisions for other people and force them to comply even if they don't consent and even if they aren't hurting anyone or violating anyone's rights with their so-called criminal behavior? If you must, you can defend this violence and claim it's necessary. Though if people are so stupid and savage as to need to be governed by violence, giving people control over others or letting the masses choose people to be in charge of them seems like a stupid idea, and it shows throughout history. Claim the violence is justified all you want, but you can't claim the government doesn't derive its authority from violence, that it's characterized by violence, and that you're willing to accept that this is the only possible way to organize society because this is all the government has ever led us to believe. Or apply consistency to this dangerous double standard and realize no one in government has power and authority over you or anyone else, and free your mind from the mental slavery of blind subservience in favor of respecting the rights of others and yourself.